we got Abram the Hebrew. Now when you look up the word Hebrew, the word there is Ibaria. Hebrew. Now they say it means one from beyond, which is bullshit. You know, because they're trying to say he came from beyond the Euphrates River, whatever madness they teach. You know, that's bullshit. The word Hebrew is from the past, Ibar, which that's what the word Ibar means. Alright, so now you look at this word Ibaria, right? That's the word Hebrew, which, matter of fact, we read right there, Hebrew. And then when we looked up in the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter, when we read about Eber, the same word was there. Matter of fact, I'll pull it up again, just so you can see. This is Genesis 10 and 21. So you had Ibaria for the Hebrew, Abram the Hebrew, and then for Eber, you had what? Ibar. It's the same exact word. And that's where the language is kept through. Was through Eber. Alright? So now, let's go from there. Because remember, after in Genesis 11 chapter, the language barrier, so to speak, and the nations were all separated into nationalities. They were separated into I'm sorry, they were already separated into nationalities, but at that particular time, at the Tower of Babel, they were changed or put together in a category as far as language was concerned. All right. So now let's go from there. We're still in the book of Genesis. Let's go to the 31st chapter. Now this is Jacob's, one of Jacob's close relatives, which was Laban. You know, because well, we'll get into it. Then we'll explain a little further. All right. This is Laban, which was uncle to Jacob, because Jacob's mother, because Isaac was speaking Hebrew. All right, and Jacob's mother, which was Rebecca, she was speaking Jacob's mother, which was Rebecca, she was speaking, you know, she understood the Hebrew, but she also knew the Aramaic, because her father Laban was an Aramaic. You know, okay. Her father Bethuel, which she had a brother, and her brother's name was Laban. So Bethuel, or Bethul, however you want to pronounce it, that was their father. He was known as a Syrian. So Rebecca and Laban were Syrian, so they spoke the Aramaic language. So when they came back, or so when she met up with Isaac, and she got with Isaac, Isaac spoke the Hebrew, but they understood them. They understood each other, because at that particular time, you know, you had the Israel. Well, they weren't called Israelites then, but the Shemitic Hebrews, they understood the Aramaic language at that time, and vice versa. The people that spoke Aramaic, they understood to a certain degree. They understood the Hebrew language, so that's why they were able to understand each other. So now this is proof that they were speaking two different dialects, even though we already read it earlier. Now this is the book of Genesis, the 31st chapter, and I'm gonna go right to the 47th verse. I'm in 46. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stone, and they took stones and made a heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha. That's what Laban called it, but Jacob called it Galeed. So they called it both the same thing, but Laban in the in the tongue of Aramaean or Syrian, he called it this word here, but then Jacob in the Hebrew, he called it Galeed. Alright, so just to let you know, they had two different dialects, and one was Aramaic and the other one was a Hebrew. Alright, now we're going to pull up the Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, in book 12, to show you that further proof of this. Alright, this is Antiquities of the Jews, book 12, chapter 2, and we're going to read this paragraph right here, paragraph 1. It says, excuse me, when Alexander had reigned 12 years, talking about Alexander the Crete, it says, and after him Ptolemy Soter 40 years, which was Ptolemy the first, as we're going to show you here. Matter of fact, here you have you have a genealogy here, or a family tree. You have Ptolemy the first, which is surnamed Soter, and you have Ptolemy the second, which is named Philadelphus. All right. And then you have here, that's Ptolemy the First. Matter of fact, I'll make that a little bigger. I mean, you lose a little resolution, but that's Ptolemy the First, and that's Ptolemy the Second. You know, two devils, two Edomites. All right, that were governing in Egypt. All right, and this is another picture of Ptolemy the Second. Same devil, different picture. All right, so that's what we're dealing with here. So Ptolemy the Soter, which was the first, he reigned 40 years, and Philadelphus, which is Ptolemy the Second, which was his son, then took the kingdom of Egypt and held it 40 years within one. He procured the law to be interpreted and set free those that were come from Jerusalem into Egypt and were in slavery there, who were 120,000. The occasion was this: Demetrius Philarius, who was library keeper to the king, was now endeavoring, if it were possible, to gather together all the books that were in the habitable earth. And that's what Esau does, man. They go around the world, and then, you know, the other nations did the same thing. You know, but Esau went around the earth, and they gathered together all the books of all the history of all the people that they have conquered, and basically whatever was unsavory to them they got rid of, and whatever was not unsavory to them they kept. And I'm sure they still may have certain books that they have in hiding that they're not going to let anybody else see but themselves. It says, in buying whatsoever was anywhere valuable or agreeable to the king's inclination, who was very earnestly set upon collecting of books, to which inclination of his Demetrius was zealously subservient. And when once Ptolemy asked him how many 10,000 of books he had collected, he replied that he had already about 20 times 10,000, but that in a little time he should have 50 times 10,000. But he said he had been informed that there were many books of the laws among the Jews worthy of inquiring after. So this guy basically was like a librarian, you know, or a record keeper for Ptolemy. So he said that there were books among the laws among the Jews worthy of inquiring after, and worthy of the king's library, but which, being written in characters and in a dialect of their own, will cause no small pains in getting them translated into the Greek tongue, that the character in which they are written seems to be like to that which is the proper character of the Syrians. See, so this particular language, the Hebrew, it was similar to the Syrian language, which was the Aramaic, and that it sounds when pronounced, and that it sounds when pronounced is like theirs also. So they had like a similar sound. They kind of looked the same, you know, in character, even though the one character had the Assyrian language, but then some of the characters kind of look the same. All right. It says, and that this sound appears to be peculiar to themselves. All right. So the basically is letting you know here that the Jews had their own language, you know, and then the Syrians had their language, but the languages were closely related. That's why today, as far as dialect is concerned, they'll say that the Bible was written in the Aramaic, and it wasn't. It's bullshit. All right. So that's enough with this. Just wanted to show you. And then this is around the time when they had the 70 priests from Jerusalem come down, or I believe it was the 70 Alexandrian Jews that translated the Bible from the Hebrew into the Greek. All right. So now let's go from there. Let's go to the book of Ezra. We'll go to the book of Ezra, the 4th chapter, and the 7th verse. And when you read, you know, you can read the book of Ezra, like I said. You brothers can do, you know, your own research, you know, and read the history. And this is going into the time when we were building up Jerusalem after the Babylonians had destroyed Jerusalem, and we were building the walls back up and the temple back up under the decrees of these Persian kings. And there were other nations that knew about our records, that knew about us, that were trying to stop the building of the temple. All right. And this is what they did. They wrote these letters to this particular king, and then we're going to read it. It says, Ezra chapter 4 verse 7. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabiel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia. See, and the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue. See, now let's go from there to the book of this here, which is the Blue Letter Bible, and we're gonna get Ezra, the 4th chapter, and the 7th verse, and we're gonna look at that right there, where it says that it was written in the Syrian tongue. All right, and when you look at the Syrian tongue, the word there is Aramia. All right, Aramaic language, the language of Aram, Aramaic. So that's letting you know that Ibar is a totally different language from Aram. Ibarya and Aramya are two different languages. They may look similar, they may sound a little similar, but they're two different languages. All right, now let's go back. It says, and interpret, I'll read it again. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabeel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia. And the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue.